You're involved with the process, you're involved with the crew and the cast, especially when you go on location and you're all basically locked in and living together for weeks at a time. I love doing that, even though as a production manager, I'm not a part of the creative end of it. It's great to be involved that way. So there's nothing really standard in my life as far as filmmaking goes. And usually if people at a film festival say, what are you working on next? Quite often I can tell you what I'm planning to work on next, but the reality of what I will work on next is totally different, because you never know what opportunities come up. This one I'm working on right now, 2 months ago, I didn't know I was going to get the call. The guy was frustrated with the previous director, and now we've got 1 day of shooting behind us and have 2 more ahead. So you never know what's going to happen.
Okay, so for this film in particular, we did principal photography for like 3 days, because that was like the time allotted for that project. But then once we kind of shot the footage, we went back and did pickups during March, because we actually shot this February. And then in March we did the pickups for that. And then once we started to just accumulate the footage, we tried to kind of play around with it and see what would kind of force that vision the best way. And I think that frenetic style and pacing kind of enhanced it. Because it wasn't like a perfect shoot, because we were like in the woods. So a lot of stuff happened that we didn't plan for. So we just kind of incorporated some of that chaos in that edit. Thank you.
How are you feeling that style, man?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that horror is one of your preferred genres to work in? And if that's the case, when you were growing up, what are some of the defining moments where you decided, yeah, like I really want to make horror?
Okay, horror is definitely one of my favorite genres. I do want to make other films in different categories, but I think with horror, it's a lot easier to kind of accomplish your goal, because like budgeting wise, it can be cheaper than doing like an action thriller, comedies and dramas and stuff of that nature. And I guess like as a kid, one of the films that really stood out to me horror wise was like 28 Days Later. That really blew me away. Just like the filming style and the storytelling in that, it really stuck with me. And then I wouldn't like consider this horror, but like the old Godzilla movies that Toho Studios did, like I grew up on that, so that was really impactful.
Colorado a lot, and that like shack that you saw at the beginning is like in where I visit in Colorado. And I thought it was really interesting because on the shack there's like alien paintings, and it's kind of just like in the middle of nowhere. So I kind of based the whole film just on that location. I was like kind of around that shack and like why those paintings would be there. So I wanted to make like an alien film just based on that location.
Yes.
What made you decide to make it a young child in your film? Because I've always heard that in the film industry, children and animals are the worst.
Yeah, it was very challenging working with a kid because he could like barely ride the bike. There was like training wheels, and like the bike was kind of broken too, so he was struggling. But I really wanted the contrast between like kind of like a really cute, like happy kid, and then like this kind of darker side of the story. Because I feel like it wouldn't have had the same effect if it had been like an adult, and kind of just like there wouldn't have been the same innocence of like the child and like him going through this like experience, I guess, with the aliens. It wouldn't have been the same like level of fear, I feel like, with an adult. So.
Gotcha.
Where did you find the kid? Because he did a good job.
It's actually my friend's little brother. So I thought he did pretty well. He like The only part he struggled with was the slime, like the last scene where he has the slime. He like really didn't want to be covered with the slime, so he kind of freaked out with that, but I thought he did a good job with it.
I thought it was sick.
Anyone else? Any questions? Yes.
So you did that for a high school project?
Yes.
You plan on pursuing film?
I don't think so. It's more of just like a hobby for me. I have to like keep doing it on the side in college, but definitely not. I don't think I'm major, but yeah.
So, are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
I thought the performances, the two talent were pretty strong. How long did it take for those scenes?
How long what?
How long did you guys rehearse?
Not long.
Well, it depends on which
Depends on which version.
which version, because that was not the original character that I was cast for.
It was a feature-length film originally, with some other characters that were in there that we weren't actually able to finish. And the character that RJ ended up playing was actually cast to someone else originally that didn't work out, although I wanted him for that character to begin with. That's another story.
So we had a lot of, about 2 weeks of rehearsals before filming to get the characters really, and then there were some character switches. There were a lot of takes, a lot of conversations around how to get the nuance of the performance, the subtlety of the performance, getting from stage to film, you know, so I'm really proud of what they
Was it improv?
excuse me?
Was it improv? Like improvisation, or it was like lines?
Oh, no.
It was lines that you
This is
guys
all
were given
scripted, but
lines?
We were both stage actors before, so transitioning that into film was a little different for us.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone?
Would you like more stage acting or film acting?
Film.
I actually prefer working behind the scenes on film.
Okay, so storyline. Was it suicide or domestic violence or?
Get the show.
It's again, it was a longer piece. The longer piece explained how she actually.
There was a lot more depth into the characters.
So with this piece, it's interpretive. The fact that you get that she's dead was the key, and that he was unable to apologize for the fight. So love is never having to say you're sorry, or if you're never given the opportunity.
And that makes sense, because while I was watching it, I was like, I figured both seem apologetic. And I was like, is it suicide or is it?
Yeah.
But that makes sense.
Is there somewhere we can find the longer?
No, unfortunately, I can send you a script, but and you're welcome to make it if you want the longer piece.
We would love to make full length.
I have a lot of film, but there was just issues when we weren't able to finish. So it took another year before I got the vision of, I had some really strong performances, and it's not a 20-minute piece, but I've got a nice little 6-8 minute whatever it is. So yeah.
And the lead actress, Mayla, she had came up from New York City, and that was her last film she was gonna shoot, and then she was moving to LA to pursue, her dreams as an actor. She was supposed to meet me up here, and I actually moved to Vancouver, Washington in January as well, working for sorry, it's kind of hard for me, a video production company out here. And she was supposed to meet up with us, and she just suddenly passed away 4 days ago. So I just wanted to show my love to her, you know what I mean?
Sorry for
Just-
your loss. Any questions or comments? Yes.
It's not a question, but that film was really well done. I love the way that it was shot, especially that domestic violence scene.
Yeah.
It was very intense. And it kind of kept me on edge of my seat throughout the film, so I really appreciated that.
Thank you, we appreciate it. That's Red, the director's name was Redwan El Ghazi. He was actually the dude in the business suit with the bum right there, but he couldn't make it. But he's a really good writer, man. He tends to go pretty dark sometimes, but I think when you're an artist, sometimes you tend to do that, you know what I mean? But I wish he could be here to really dig deep and tell you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that it is an excellent film, and
Thank you.
I guess I had this feeling of what was going to happen to Martin. And it was really tough to watch.
Yeah.
So,
Red
great
was-
casting.
Thank
Great
you.
casting.
I appreciate that. I casted a couple short films in film school, and I kind of like really liked it, you know, just like kind of just finding talent. The Syracuse area is starting to pick up for film because, you know, there's a lot of tax breaks in New York and whatnot, and they got like this film hub. So when I was in college casting these films, I started meeting some people, and then just good old Craigslist, just putting out like a professional casting on Craigslist, and held an audition at my wife's studio, and we just were able to bring in a really good cast. And Mushaka and Mela, the husband and wife, are pretty much handpicked by Red. But the rest, which I agree with him obviously, but the rest we kind of brought in. But Red did tell me, like, I know he's a good friend of mine. He was right out of film school. He didn't have a full-time job. Like, this is his passion. He was super depressed. And I think he just took that energy and kind of put it into the film, you know what I mean? So I think that's where his mind state was. And this dude is always having random dreams that he makes into films too, so. Awesome. Love him. Anything else? Anyone else?
Great film, even the tender moment between daddy and daughter.
Yeah.
Beautiful scene. But for all the chaos.
I think Red wanted him to kind of go out, you know, because it's like the whole suicide by cop thing, kind of, obviously Martin couldn't do it, you know, so he kind of wanted him to go out, with the way Red explained it, is in like a cowardly way. It was hard for him to really get that done, but.
Right now working in Madison, Wisconsin, so I fly over here this weekend. So yeah, just any questions? Yeah.
So this you did this charcoal, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about your decision to go with that medium and maybe some like difficulties and what you liked about it?
So originally I really wasn't planning on using this particular medium. Yeah, so at first I thought about animating this story that I've heard about many years ago. It's kind of like a mythical, like Chinese story that I've heard before about the sword casting and how this couple who were casting the sword for a king and or an emperor, and he ordered them to cast a sword, but it's not possible for them to make in such a short time. And so basically the story is about how the woman decided to sacrifice herself to make the sword, and she threw herself into the fire, and there are like multiple versions of the story. And so it's more like a myth. We don't really know what really happened, or it's even a true story or not. So at first when I heard about it, I just feel really like emotionally like attached to it for some reason. I just felt like the kind of like emotions behind, like especially the female character, is really just really interesting to me. And at first I really just thought I'm just gonna do like a short narrative animation. But then I think the more I started to like think about the meaning and the concept behind the story, the more I wanted to be expressive about the kind of feeling the character has. So I got to the point that I have to decide how I'm gonna tell the story with animation, and just somehow I figured that I wanted to work with a dancer who can do some choreography for the kind of like physical movement of this character rather than telling the story with more like a traditional way. So I wanted to be more experimental already, and by doing that, by collaborating with this dancer, I figured that charcoal has a very nice structure, like flexible structure to kind of like be very expressive and like it can be very soft, but it can also be very hard. So it has a lot of like possibilities to work with, and it's really fun to just experiment with the kind of like different ways to to be expressive, especially with body movement in that particular medium. So this is all done under camera, frame by frame, with charcoal, and it's mostly rotoscoped from a video I shot with this dancer. But there are parts that I made up myself. There are parts that are frame by frame. There are parts that just shoot on 2 and even larger frames. So if that answers your question.
It was absolutely gorgeous. I loved it. I'm curious as to if you could elaborate on how you decided to choose the types of shots to express the story.
Yeah. So when I was working with a dancer, I have thought a lot about how the story would be presented by just only body languages mostly. And I had a feeling that somehow it should be kind of, I don't know, the feeling of very like mystical, I guess. Like at first I want the structure to be how the character came in, and it looks like it's a very elegant dance. Like it looks like there's this character dancing on the screen, but the more you watch, the more you get into it, you see the kind of like expression she's showing. It's not just a typical dancing. It's not just a dance movement she's doing. It's more than that, and it's actually have more depth into it, that she's kind of like performing and like freely like expressing herself before she actually like the sacrifice and before she died basically. So I wanted to be kind of like at first very quietly and like gracefully, but then it got into more like dramatic and like bold and like movement.
I definitely got that sense, and I feel like you effectively communicated that.
It's good to know that
Beautiful.
I have communicated that to the dancer. So, and she did a really good job too. She's very talented. So.
I really liked the script in the beginning. I thought it was really beautiful. I was wondering if you could tell me more about that. It didn't look modern to me.
So it's a type of very traditional calligraphy in Chinese history. It's done mostly in the very early dynasty, so very long time ago. It's called 篆书, but it has more complex strokes compared to modern Chinese characters. So it's.
Is that what the legend is from, that period?
Yeah.
So I'm not, when I was doing this film, I was not influenced by anybody. I was just kind of like secluded and trying to get out what's inside of me. So, yeah.
Awesome. Next question or comment? Anyone?
I'm trying to, I want to understand like the last scene. I guess it's kind of like boggles me a little bit. I'm not quite sure.
You mean the meat scene?
The meat scene.
Yeah, so basically the idea behind is, does life cook you or do you cook the life? So it's kind of how you, because the black figures represent the obstacles, and in the end, it's your choice to how you react to life and how you react to those obstacles. Yeah.
And you, sir?
So you said you're the DP, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I watched it, it had a very like very fine black and white film feeling to it. I felt like Ilford kind of sympathy to it.
I was going for that look, yes, but it was all digital. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was gonna ask about that. Like, how did you light it, or how did you do stuff in post to make it look that fine kind of film?
The film was done all natural light. We didn't use any artificial lights, and I kind of had that idea of film because in the past I was a fashion photographer, and I printed my own photographs in the darkroom, so that's kind of represented. And I did work with the Ilford as well, and that kind of stuck in my mind. And I was like, I want that feel to have in a film. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Where are you from?
From Ukraine, but I live in Seattle right now.
Ukraine?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I'm shocked.
That's
That's far, right?
But I still love your last name, Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Was a producer and art director and assistant makeup.
And I'm Donna. I co-wrote and assistant, art direction, and did the prosthetic makeup.
We're married.
I'm married.
About a year and a half ago, we both worked in television, and we lost our jobs.
Yes.
So we all got laid off from our
Within months,
jobs.
yes.
The network that I worked for essentially just demolished their entire creative services department. So we decided that we would just get
the
together
band back
anyway,
together
since
and,
we'd worked with each other for so long that we liked each other so much, and we just decided we would make this sarcastic little movie.
And we're really glad that you didn't play us after all the drama.
Yeah, I had to try to wait.
I really felt, we're like,
Sorry, it's not as serious as other people.
Yeah.
I apologize. But we shot that all in one day.
yeah, one long, grueling,
16 hours, 16,
plus
17
hour
hour
day.
day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. How did you come up with the premise?
Oh,
A really good friend of ours.
yeah.
I mean, there were about 5 of us at the core group, and we would sit down. We would meet every couple weeks or so,
Yeah,
and sit
starting
down
last
for dinner.
January.
And we went down like 3 or 4 different directions before we kind of came to this one, and it's like.
Yeah, we
I think
wrote
this
script
one's
after script after script, and then versions of different scripts, and then
Right.
just one day, our friend Shane, who also directed and co-wrote, just said, "Screw all that. How about this
How about this
idea
one?"
of
And
this
we all
guy
went.
who's just annoyed by his coworker who's
Yeah,
a
not
ghost?" And we're
scared
like,
by
"All
this guy who's being haunted by.
Yeah.
He's just really irritating, and we thought that was great. Shane's first, his first iteration of the script really started off on a comedy note and just kept through. I kind of decided I kind of wanted to go a little more, a little creepy, not true horror, but just a little creepy, a little suspenseful at the beginning, and then kind of evolve into the horror.
Yeah, because
or
I mean,
into the comedy.
the comedy would be more impactful if
it's
you're being led
contrasted
down
with
this,
something.
being led down a different road, and then you take a turn. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the bathroom was scary too. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh goodness gracious! Any other questions? Any comments? Any more?
This was also a zero budget, and
I think we spent
we spent money
because
we had to buy prosthetics and things.
Yeah.
But there was no.
And we bought
budget.
dinner for the crew.
Yes.
Yes. You gotta pay them something.
Sounds great, job.
Yes, Jennifer.
How many film projects would you say the two of you together have produced over the years total?
I
don't know, 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
And we still like each other.
20.
That's-
I mean, but we were, full time in television for 20 years,
Right.
as you know, and that's our friend, so she knows it.
What network?
So having a full time job is kind of hard to do this all the time. Yes.
So, can I ask you where you filmed?
Oh yeah. So
we're from the Denver area.
Our director of photography works in a studio, it's called Lighting Services Incorporated, and they've been around in Denver renting motion picture equipment for 40 years or something. So that was in the back of their warehouse, right next to their big soundstage.
And
they let us have it for free.
Yeah, they said, hey,
Yeah.
guys, we're closed up on Saturday. If you want to come in, do your thing, clean up,
Yeah.
leave it like you found it.
Yeah, so they let us use
So-
all their lights and everything. It was really crazy,
It all just kind of fell in.
We shot on the Red camera. Another guy we knew had Red cameras, and we had 2 of those for free. And some other supplier gave us a bunch of lenses. I mean, we had to get insurance for them, but yeah, so it was kind of crazy that just all these different people and even companies that would normally be making money doing this sort of thing just lent us things, and it was a testament to like who you know. I didn't know any of those people, but you know.
Our friend Jenny, who was
the executive
producer on this, she is a master
Yeah, really.
of getting people to donate their time for free. I could never in a million years do it myself, but she just approaches people and they love her.
So yeah, it's nice
And,
if
so
you know.
it's always
if
good to
you-
have somebody like that on your group.
Definitely.
to get like events like this, and I don't know. I'm sure they do the 48-hour film challenge up here. Have you ever heard of that? Where you script and shoot and edit and deliver a movie in 48 hours. And that's a
It's
great
pretty
way to
grueling,
meet
but it's,
like-minded film people, and you just build a group of friends who just want to do the same thing. Yes.
The actors, they live in Denver?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great
In
actors.
fact, we cast the guy who played Trevor first, because Jenny knew him from another like,
From
commercial
doing,
that she
and doing 48 hours
Yeah,
stuff
and doing 48
and a
hours
Doritos commercial.
Yeah.
And they-
So she cast him first, and he, and we were having the hardest time trying to cast Larry. And she just said to him, I know you're in an improv group. Do you know somebody? Do you work really well off of somebody? And he says, I know the guy. So those two, man, they were goofing off all day long.
They live in LA? I mean, sorry, they live in Denver?
Yeah.
Yes.
They should move to LA. They're great actors.
Yeah, and they've both been in, commercials.
Or Atlanta.
And other things since.
Yeah. So the guy that played the burglar, he was actually one of the PA/grips. He got cast that morning because our actor got food poisoning.
Yeah, the guy who was supposed to do the
We don't-
burglar, he was this like mountainous, red bearded Viking of a guy, and he got food poisoning the night before. He's
Yeah. Food poisoning on a Friday night.
I think it was the bottle flu personally, but that's what I suspect. Yeah.
We had food poisoning quite a lot in the military for PT after a long week.
It happens. It happens.
Anyway, I don't want to dominate any more time. Is there any other questions?
Any other questions? Any other comments?
Yes.
Real quick, are you guys working on anything else right now, and when's the sequel?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people ask if we're going to do a series with
They
these
want us
guys.
to do a TV series based on these guys,
That'd be so
and
I'm working on an animation right now, stop motion animation. We've got a couple different stop motion
I'm working on
ideas.
one as
They're
well.
both kind of space related. One vaguely serious, one totally ridiculous. So, yeah.
So we did a little bit of scouting. I was my father is a paleontologist actually at UNLV, so I was going out on a dig with him, and we passed by that opera house, the building that's out in the middle of the desert. It's in Death Valley Junction. And in the opera house, there's this theater called the Amargosa Opera House. Well, so it's a hotel. In the hotel, they have this Amargosa Opera House. And so I asked about it. I was like, what's the deal with this building out here in the middle of nowhere? And apparently there's this woman named Marta Beckett who went there in the 1930s, I guess, 1940s, and got stranded there with her husband and got this artistic inspiration to draw audiences on the wall. She was a performer, she was a dancer, she was a pianist. So she got inspiration to draw an audience on the walls in this old theater in the middle of the desert. So that was her thing. She finishes her mural after like 10 years or something like that. She only died a couple years ago. And so she was still dancing and performing in this opera house until a couple years ago. So I went out there about a year ago and saw it, and I was like, wow, this place is really cool. I want to make this video, and I kind of want to work with them to see if we can make it happen. It was really tough to get them to agree to let us shoot in there. We only had 2 hours to shoot inside the room itself. Wow. So we made sure we had all our shots lined up, and the dancer that you saw was Marta Beckett's protege. And so she dances now and performs there during the seasons they have. So she was really excited and on board for the project also. So that's kind of a nod to Marta who drew those murals. So that's how we kind of figured out what we wanted to do. The plot-wise, we were just kind of like throwing together ideas, and I don't know if it's kind of ambiguous, but you know, he sends me back in time to kill somebody, but I end up being the person I'm supposed to kill. So I don't know if that came across, but you know, there was this kind of came to kind of something we didn't really focus on. Just wanted to get a lot of the scenery and stuff like that.
Any other questions, comments?
Was there a significance behind the costumes? I noticed there was a tallest.
Right. So we just kind of went through our closets and kind of got what we could, you know, to try to look like we were just out in the middle of the desert, a band on tour with nothing but our instruments on. So we wanted to look really desperate, and you know, all we had is water bottles and, you know, pretty much whatever we could throw on. We wanted kind of a Mad Max feel, a little bit like that, where, you know, we kind of had some weird stuff going on in the desert. So I pretty much threw on whatever I had in my closet, did a little bit of a, you know, costume shopping for the weird goggles and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just some old Talis I had. You know, my buddy Micah had that weird baklava, I think it's called, or something like that, the Hungarian mask or something like that. So we kind of just scrounged through what we had to put the costumes together.
Cool. Any other questions, comments? No? Awesome.
Thank you. Whoever said that, thank you. That's not how we really sound. So we kind of have a couple different sounds for our songs. So that was one of our songs that was a little more listenable, a little more appealing to the ears. So we started as a punk rock band way back when. So if you want to check us out, we've got our music on iTunes and Spotify and stuff like that. We have a couple more videos if you want to watch. We have one called Hipster that we made a couple years ago, and another one called Dragon Slayer up on YouTube. Yeah, our music is all over the place, so that's not a really good representation of our music, unfortunately. The Quitters is the name of the band. The Quitters. Thank you for asking.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Oh, he is the nicest man in the world.
Very
wonderful.
huge contrast.
He was actually, he had just completed working on Showtime's Roadies. He played the drum technician on that show. But he's a lovely, lovely man. Not at all that.
Did you have him on wheels when he was going by, or was he just
walking? So this whole film was part of a 60-day film competition, which every team was given 3 short stories that were written by a writing group in San Diego that were all true stories. And we had to pick one of the 3 we were given to turn into a film and adapt it and do all the things that we ended up doing with it. And I took the bent, and Steve is my co-writer, and our buddy Joe, who helped co-write, we took the bent that we wanted to do a dark comedy with the story that we decided to choose, which was Feeder Rats. And for the most part, it's the core story that you see there, but we wanted to find the humor in it, and we basically didn't write humor into the script, but told the actors, you know, if you see a spot where we can make this more humorous, like the snake in the tree. And,
Don't ask me how many takes.
And the Blumberg character sliding along the wall and fading away. All of that just kind of happened organically on the set because everybody was looking for things to do that would be odd and take the whole film to kind of a weirder, different level. And we really played around with the idea that the lead character is out of his element with this girl because she lives in a whole different world from him. And so like the only time you see her in daylight is when they're together because she has to go out to daylight to like show him how to take care of knocking out the rat, which is a weird thing to do anyway. So that's a weird universe colliding in that moment. But the rest of the time, all of her stuff's nighttime. It's dark and it's club scene and it's, you know, got that kind of Gem and the Holograms and John Wick kind of neon colors. And then his life is all, you know, Office Space and Anchorman and, you know, brightly lit and fluorescent and weird stuff happens. But you know, it doesn't necessarily, their 2 lives don't make a whole lot of sense. Even though she lives in this weird world that's all neon colors and stuff, she kind of leads a more normal life in the film than he does. Because he's surrounded by, you know, kind of bizarre characters like the guy and throwing a snake in a tree. And, you know, so we took some risks. The guy who wrote the story, Eber Lambert, I later found out is the father of Adam Lambert, who was on American Idol.
Okay.
And I was nervous as could be because of the liberties we took with the story. And actually, Lilith was a band manager, not the lead singer of the band, but I thought it'd be sexier for the film if she was the singer. And he came running down the aisle at the end of Q&A at the contest screening. He's like, "I loved the movie. I couldn't believe it. You nailed Lilith. You got her down pat." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, we took a lot of liberties." He's like, "I had no idea how you could turn it into a movie, but there it is." But it was a great exercise taking somebody else's story and then trying to figure out how to make it cinematic, because it was all first-person narrative stuff. The way it was written. So.
Yeah, our other choices for short stories was a girl trying to breed championship guinea pigs. Yeah, don't work with kids or animals, so these are the two that we got was all about animals.
Yeah, so, but, and we made the decision because it was first-person narrative and we figured the rest of the competition in films would have also similar style stories that they were translating to film. We didn't want to do narrative. We didn't want to have anybody narrating the film from their perspective. But it was really, really hard to kind of find that emotional center of their story without being able to tell the audience kind of the shorthand of everything. And that's when I kind of realized, hey, these 3 songs, if I stick them in at the right spots, the narrative is kind of sung to everybody that way by one of the characters. So it's kind of her inner narrative of where they're at. And I was really fortunate. I went to the Jerome Film Festival in Arizona around the time that we finished Forever My Love, and met a musician named Lindsay Catt from New York City there. And I called her up and was like, "Hey, Lindsay, I'm doing this really weird, quirky film, but I think some of your songs would be amazing in it." And I sent her the script.
And Jody got an opportunity, and she now lives originally was in Louisiana, and then now she lives in Kansas City. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I've been taking these pictures, and while this stuff's going on, I'm just documenting the day, because she's not able to be here.
I'm sure she's an honor up there too.
Yeah.
Can
so
I
thank
recommend you to my agent?
Yes, you can. I could send you some stuff, so.
Yeah, if you, I'll she lives in Vancouver, but she casts all around the US and in Canada. So I'm pretty sure that you'll be a good asset for her.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, because of Jody, she's the one who told me that I should be a producer, and because of it, I actually am now a filmmaker. And she's been such an amazing support and mentor for me.
We have to do it all, not just act.
Yeah. Well, and you need good people behind you, and people who have talent, and you know that you can trust what they are saying is accurate. And she has no problem to let me know when something is not right. Yes.
Are you Latina or?
No, but I can passport. Actually, one of my pieces is in the Seattle Latino Film Festival coming up.
But you're not Latina.
No.
What are you? I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry for
a
asking.
mix.
We all are.
I'm an exotic
We all
mix.
are.
So Taiwanese, German, Irish, and Welsh is the main mixture. Okay. But it gives me this kind of universal, international look. For exotic, not Caucasian. Just in case you're wondering. I know.
How did you approach playing the 2 different women?
How did I approach it? I mean, they're obviously very different. I really wanted the role because, you know, the caretaker is she's more plain and just really down to earth. And the other Mara obviously is more sultry and more confident, and they're just in my eyes opposite. It's this Frank's world, which is a lot of us go into. We have our conscious and subconscious world, and subconsciously maybe we don't think we're adequate enough or we're not good enough. And if we really just kind of step out of that and look at the amazing things we do, maybe we wouldn't have so much of these internal conflicts. I know I kind of went that way. But and the other reason I fought for this role so badly, and I told Jody, I'm like, you can make me as plain and as ugly as you want, because I was getting stereotyped and cast. And it does happen. And
Really?
Yeah, and that was hugely why I made Asylum, was because I was getting stereotyped and I wanted to show, again, what people of exotic looks are capable of. And if you could just erase that and allow people, I mean, look at this room, it's a mixture of people, and that's how I see my world. You know, the pigeonhole, and we put this here, and we put this there, and we put that there. So, and actually the gentleman, but he left, I was gonna tell him one of the first films where it was the tribal African.
In stock, yeah.
In stock. I actually would challenge him to think out of the box, and maybe it would have been a more impactful statement if it was Caucasian doing that, or some demographic, because of the fact is, like, we naturally think a person of color tends to be the predator,
Correct.
and stuff. Anyway, so if you see him, ask him to like think a little differently.
I was thinking about the same thing. I was like,
Because I mean, all cultures have beauty, and all all demographics, Caucasian,
we all
Latino,
are beautiful.
Yeah, and then we all have hardships too, though. We have to.
Yes, definitely, which is why I have to love the fact that when people make films that are in memory of people, or it calls them to have an emotion, they want to share with everyone else, because like you said before, people have, it was spoke to earlier about grief and being able to share grief and get through grief and things of that nature. I was standing here the entire time like, my grandma passed in December. I get it. You know what I'm saying? I understand. So yeah, you're right. We're all the same in some sense, whether we realize it or not, or want to admit to. Anyone else?
It was a great short film.
I will tell her. Yeah, I will tell her
Really?
that it was.
Yeah, really.
Thank you.
Thank you again.